All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Board meeting of May 27th. Call to order and roll call. So we start with that. Show them how it's done. Chris Solney.
Here.
Gordon Brewster.
Here.
Peter Morton.
Here.
Sandy Bodmer-Turner.
Here.
And Brian Fry.
Here.
Great. Welcome to Brian and Sandy. And congratulations to Brian, Sandy, and Gordon for their election success. So here we are. Really excited to have you on. And I did submit a letter to the Cricket today, as is our practice, to thank Laura and Mary for their service to the planning board. So the first thing we're going to do very quickly, I hope quickly, is to elect officers. We do this every year just to reorganize or organize. So are there any nominations?
So I'd like to nominate Sarah as chair and Sue Philbrick as vice chair.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Well, thank you for your confidence in us. Sue and I do work well together, and we're one team here. So great. Thank you. The next thing is we actually have no A&Rs or other business. So that worked out perfectly. Tonight we have Kathy McCabe with us. As you saw her proposal, if you guys didn't, we have engaged Kathy to help us with some planning around the downtown. When we did the MBTA task force work, we identified the downtown as being vulnerable to changes. We know that we have some challenges with economic development with open, unleased properties, and it seems to be on everybody's mind. So Kathy, introduce yourself and lead us. Okay, we are, it looks like we don't have too many people online, only Jane. Hi, Jane. But we're going to engage pretty much with ourselves for starters. If we have time, we'll do some public comment, but this is going to be a discussion among ourselves. And I know Brian and Sandy, you're coming up to speed. Don't worry. This is a beginning, not an end. And so Kathy.
Well, and thank you and congratulations, Sandy, and for your new arrival status as planning board members. I'm Kathy McCabe, and I'm a planning consultant. I've been working in this space of downtown revitalization, community planning, and economic development for more years than I'd like to remember. But I have a background that I've been on the Boston Landmarks Commissioner in the past, so I understand historic districts as well as the economics of downtown revitalization. And I'm also a daughter of a small business owner, so that kind of gives me a different insight. So I was going to downtown committees and taking minutes when I was in high school. So I have a long interest and commitment to downtowns. And basically what our proposal was to be able to help you do some initial visioning and discussion and kind of build some consensus on the vision for the future of downtown Manchester, or at least take an initial cut at it, but also not just vision, but because sometimes as planners we look long term and we think about vision, but people want action. So we want to make sure that we identify some short-term, low-hanging fruit action steps. Because oftentimes when you're in discussions of visioning, people start identifying things that we should do. So we kind of have a dual purpose. And that kind of fits my approach to things, because I think you need to, implementation is key to planning and building public confidence and sustaining public confidence in planning. And that's why my email is mccabe@plan-do, because I like to plan, but I also like to do something to make a difference. So that's kind of our scope, kind of broad brush scope. We're anticipating doing a community workshop that's going to be participatory at your next planning board meeting, which is Monday, June 9th. And I've talked to Sarah and Mark about, I think they're working through the logistics and probably will involve you on some of that, and encouraging members of other boards and committees and your neighbors, so that we get many voices, so that we can, and the more voices that participate, the better from my perspective. Because you can always narrow down, but we got to call and get all the ideas out there. So we're going to do it in the evening. Probably going to be 2+ hours. I don't want to burn the midnight oil, but it's not, but having a discussion takes some time, and we need to work through issues. But I would really want to start with a discussion now, because we talk about downtown, but I have a question for you about, and maybe we can just go around like a round table, and then is what makes downtown Manchester special to you?
It's a walkable distance from my home. And there's certain basic services that I use. I also feel that there's certain basic services that used to exist in the town for families and that are gone and have not been replaced, and I'm not sure why. So does that give you a sense?
Well, it's however you want to answer. It's
Yeah,
very
that's
broad, but it's like, let's focus on what's special, because that's really important to know and identify what's important to people. So anyone can jump in.
So, agree with what Sandy said. I love that it is walkable. It's, I think it's well proportioned to the size of the town. I think that it could definitely be better planned as far as I mean, for a town our size, it kind of seems like there's a little sprawl in there because you've got like two ends to it. And I wonder if by consolidating it a little, you could eliminate some of the issues that are existing right now with storefronts. I'm concerned. My concern is that you've heard people talk about the dynamics of downtown and how they seem to be changing because there are less and less retailers there, and the categories of retail that are there are, real estate pretty much dominates a lot of downtown. And I just wonder if with spiraling real estate costs and the required rent to allow those, if they are investments, to work, that it may not be possible to have sustainable businesses in there. So I'm really curious about the model as it exists today and whether there is a different model that we could consider. I don't know what that is. And I will say too that prior to this, we had talked about spending some time with the master plan. It's interesting because I basically looked at it comprehensively for the first time since I've lived in town, and I've been here for 30+ years. I thought that plan was 2017? Is that when it was released? And a lot of the concerns that were outlined in that plan are exactly what we're hearing now. So that supports my point of how can you fix it? It just seems to be a continuing carousel, really. I think what's going to be really telling is what happens with the Cargo Unlimited building. And I think that's a really important piece to our downtown. And I think we need to be really careful about the outcome of at least the first floor of that as it pertains to the rest of downtown. And there's been some conversation in this board that I've listened to and agree with about how the town is in jeopardy of being disconnected, and that's why I talk about possibly trying to intentionally bring it more together. I'm not a planner by trade, so I'm not sure how you do that, but you can just see it beginning to fray on the edges, and what's happening is the middle is getting impacted.
So you've been really good at diagnostics.
Yeah.
But what's special to you?
I think everything that I just provided diagnostics for. I think as I said, it's a manageable town for the size, the physical size of our town. I think to Sandy's point, it's got the uses that are important to a town. It's in character with the rest of the town. Yeah, I'm not sure what else I could say right now, but I'm sure I'll hear some things from others here that will resonate too.
So I honestly can't differentiate the downtown from the rest of the town. I mean, the reason why I came here, my speech the other night, the reason why I came here is because I love this little town. I love it. I love the size, the shape, access to schools, the fact you can walk, you can ride a bike to the beach, and all of that, all of those features, and the downtown itself too. It's just a great place to live. The downtown itself, honestly, this is my background is in real estate development, so I'm not unfamiliar with not this particular type of challenge, but I'm unfamiliar with the process of coming in and making things better like that. So I think this is what we're about to embark on is really a positive thing for us. I really think it's kind of like an untapped wealth of things to do in this town, and yet to happen. And I think the palette is kind of laid out, and in some odd sort of way, having the tenants not entering here, not going into leases in here, actually may give us an opportunity to turn something around and utilize those spaces for something else. So beyond that, I just love it here. I love the small town, and I see this as very much of a positive effort moving forward. Let's do it.
I have a long list of things that I'd like us to talk about for improving, but in terms of what makes it special, my husband and I always say that Manchester has a strong sense of community, and you can get what you need to survive COVID in Manchester and downtown. There's a hardware store, there's a pharmacy, and there's a really good grocery store, and a bank. And
And a dry cleaners.
And a liquor store.
and a liquor store, right? and some restaurants. So, and you go to the restaurants and you see people you know, and you go to the grocery store and you see people you know, and you go to the post office and see people you know. So, I like the fact that you see people you know, and that, but it is part of a larger. I think also there's a wonderful park where kids play soccer, and then there's the bandstand, and I see that as an important part of downtown. And I think the jewel of Manchester is the harbor, and the harbor views, I think, are critical to preserve, and the harbor view and the harbor and the parks that are there are a really important part of downtown. And I'll hold on opportunities. I have a long list. Of worries.
So for me, actually, I think the harbor is a resource that we've turned our back on.
Yeah.
It's our back door, it's not our front door, which is a huge mistake. But my son refers to Manchester, he lives in Brooklyn, he calls Manchester busy town, Richard Scarry's Busy Town. Because we've got every little thing that's in Busy Town. We have the grocery store, the hardware store, the liquor store, the library, the bookstore, they're every little, so that that's I think one of the charming things about the town. And the third one is the diversity of architecture. We don't have a style, we're not Nantucket, we're not Litchfield, Connecticut. It's this vast array of different kinds of buildings that make the town very special, including the fact that half the downtown is residential. There are single-family homes in this downtown with front lawns. So that's sort of interesting also.
I'll say what makes it special for me is the recreation and leisure activities for families in particular that the downtown offers. Some folks have touched on the public parks. So Masconomo Park is right there. We have a great harbor view. We have the beach. You can really spend a whole afternoon or day, asterisk, in the right season with your family downtown. But I think that downtown is ripe for so much more opportunities with things like the summer concert series we have at Masconomo Park, those, family-oriented activities that draw folks to the downtown, having more planned offerings and more for people to do to spend their money and time in the downtown would be great.
Mark, do you want to add anything?
No, I think they've pretty much covered a lot of the things that people like when they have worked in a number of towns with little centers and reasons why people like it. Sense of community, the activities, the opportunity to get what you need, all those types of things. Everything's here. So I think everyone's mentioned those types of things. So the waterfront. I mean, there's a lot of positive things here. So
Along with the positive things, and it's really helpful to hear, and I'm also proposing these questions to the Downtown Improvement Committee,
Oh, good.
as well as the Historic District Commission. So I'm not just picking on you, but I'm looking for common themes, and this also helps me get immersed in those shit, and also help us prepare for the community workshop on the 9th.
Can I ask you a question of you, Kathy? What's your impression of the town?
I think you have a really walkable downtown. You have an amazing array of different business types. The harbor and the park being in close proximity. You seem to be trying to figure out how to balance cars, pedestrians, and bikes, which is not easy in any downtown. And for having a state road through downtown, you're doing it pretty successfully. Is there room for improvement? There's always room for improvement. So I've always, I've driven through Manchester many times because I used to have in-laws in Magnolia. So I'm a little more familiar with Magnolia, but Manchester always caught my eye, so it's kind of like, oh, we should stop, it was, but, we're always in a hurry because, running, when you have family events. So I would, overall, I think it's really positive. And and the comments that I'm hearing is, it's not just about it's about the place, but also the people in the place and the warmth and friendship of, that having a small downtown and seeing people and your neighbors kind of reinforces. So I think it strikes me as part of the heart of your town, an important part of the heart of your town.
Well, I think there are three misconceptions that people have about the town. And the first one is that we have a parking and traffic problem. And it is true that maybe on 6 weekends a year, we do have a traffic and parking.
I didn't
problem.
say you had a problem. I said, I think you're
No,
balancing it.
but I think residents have the perception that there's a parking problem. And that tends to quash any kinds of talk about more retail or
I will
economic
say-
activity.
If there's a downtown that doesn't have a parking problem, it probably has a business development problem.
Well, we're only using 65% of our available parking.
Right, I mean, but when you have so much parking and you can, park anywhere, it means you don't have enough customers.
Yeah.
So there's a chicken and egg issue.
Well, there's a second misconception, which is that the market here is a high-end affluent market. And in fact, most of the businesses in downtown don't cater to the wealthy people. They cater to blue collar. The market is really a blue collar market. The rich people all go to other places to do their fancy shopping and eating. And the third misconception is that Manchester is a destination. And it is true Singing Beach is a destination, but nothing else in town really is. We're on the road from Beverly to Gloucester. And Magnolia. And people don't come here because the downtown is here. They come because they're passing through for the most
They
part.
come because of Singing Beach.
Yeah, that's only, that's a few weekends a year.
Or no, when they come to walk their dogs on St. Beach.
Well, that's true, there are other dogs.
Oh, in the winter, it's huge, yeah.
Or play pickleball on our courts.
Yeah, or play pickleball on that court. Yeah, I was gonna say, I kind of broke the opportunities or the needs into a bunch of categories. I do think we have to, our zoning, it makes us very vulnerable right now to conversions to residential. And with parking in front along the streetscape, that's clear to me anyway. That we don't allow mixed use. We have some needs for public services like the public bathrooms. We have needs for economic development. Really thoughtful economic development that says, Manchester is a place where you come for whatever it is. And that, there were 2 supplements that just came out. And you look at the things to do in Manchester, in both of those, the concerts weren't in there. The things that we already have were missing from one of them entirely. And so we're not doing a good job of promoting, and our businesses weren't highlighted. And so for whatever reason, in that, not the Cricket one, but the other one, the Gloucester Times one, it was like Salisbury to Marblehead. And Manchester got like this much space. So we're not publicizing, it's an economic development effort. It needs to be, we need to spend some effort on that, I think, to promote what we have. And I wonder, sort of to Chris's point about who the businesses have served historically, I think they have largely served the people who are here. And some people that pass through, but and I'd be curious to know if my hunch is right or not. The people come and have, the townspeople. And I do think that there's another side of the economic development, which is what I call local commerce. And, any of us who have our doctor send prescriptions to CVS instead of Allen's, we're part of the problem. To the extent that we never go to Crosby's, then we're part of the problem. If we go to Home Depot and never go to the hardware store, we're part of the problem. I think we're all guilty. The townspeople are all guilty of that. There's Amazon and those other things, but I worry about the aging of some of the business owners. We need, if Allen's is going to continue to be a pharmacy, then somebody
the owner's gonna sell it someday, whether it's tomorrow or in 20 years. And in order for it to be a valuable pharmacy, my prescriptions need to go there. So then I go in and buy my toothpaste too. So I think we could communicate to the townspeople their role in some of that as part of an economic development strategy. I mean, it's, we need to say, keep your business in town. And perceived parking, I think future flooding is a real, it's not even future. And then the other thing is the economics of the rental of whatever the first floors are going to be, given that many of our buildings are very, are aging. Many of the, not our, the private, the real estate is, if you look across the street, that building is 200 years old and it's, that outer in the, you don't have to look too hard to see the condition of that building. So many of our buildings in the town in the downtown in particular, need significant investment. And in this market, that's the economics of that concern me, and I don't know what the answer to that is. But it's part of the thing that, among the things we need to think about with there's incentives or if there are help we can give. So
I have a couple comments and a couple questions.
Yeah, I was, kind of piggybacking on Sarah's comments. My next question was speaking about what are your concerns about downtown? And I think Sarah had a litany of concerns, so,
I have a couple comments.
Okay.
One, I think I disagree with you, Chris, about not being a destination. Because I think we are a destination, not just for Singing Beach, but the harbor that you both mentioned is a destination. And Brian, for whatever complications he's caused, has been working hard to make the harbor a destination. So to make places where people can park their boats, walk into town, pick up a sandwich, do whatever. So I think it is currently a destination for sailors as well as Singing Beach folks. And a lot of people do come up on the train and walk down to Singing Beach because we're probably the closest walk. The second thing is, I think that I find, and I got a correction sort of from my daughter. It was very interesting. I was talking to her about the downtown. And I think there are demographics that are missing. One that I'm keenly aware of, when we first came to town 26 years ago, there were lots of places, shops that had things for kids. There were at least 3 places. At the candy store with Alice, there were 2 different toy stores. Now, toys are different, but toys for kids from 0 to 5, maybe, there's still toy stores for kids that age. So, so there's a demographic around kids and school kids, in particular younger school, elementary school kids, because there is a freedom that kids have here to move around. And when it's an early release day, kids used to go downtown, get fried mozzarella sticks and a cream soda, right? So, so that's a missing piece, I think. And then that's a little bit looking backwards, but looking forwards, there is this new development, this biotech development on the other side of the highway. And so there's going to be a whole bunch of biotech workers, so people who are in their 20s and 30s, and how do we get them downtown, and what do they want? And I guess my big question to you is, how do we figure out what people want? Both those, children, how do you figure that out? And because we've got a, ladies dress shop, real estate aid, some basic good things, but, there's no, and there could be, if, and I don't know how you would actually do this, but if you got a really great restaurant here, you might find people coming to town for that restaurant. I'm not sure what it would be. I mean, I certainly have some ideas, but what the heck? I mean, that's my idea. What are people looking for? Not another Italian pub food place, please. Sorry, guys. Anyway, and that's about it.
But I think, and this is something that I said, just to build on what you just said about there not being any toy stores in town anymore. I don't know, and that was my point. I don't know that there will ever be another toy store in town, just because of the ease of and the habits of the way people are purchasing now. I just don't. I don't know. That's just a hunch. I don't have any evidence to back it up other than just watching retail trends. I think we have a lot of services downtown, which I think all downtowns need. And I agree with Sarah. I think that those services are all very good services too. I mean, I think you nailed it. The Crosby, I think Allen's, and the hardware store is awesome. I mean, they've got a great selection there, and I agree. That's something that we've got to create awareness around, is that these services are available in town.
I want to talk to the toy store because kids don't buy online. Parents buy online, but kids don't. And there are times when I do see children still coming from the school to go downtown, but there's really no place for them to shop anymore. Where are they going to shop? Yeah. So
Balance.
well, no, I mean,
Candy, they've
yeah,
got toys, they've
yeah.
got.
Not much. I mean, compared to what there used to be, no. And if you go, why can't Gloucester have a great toy store? We don't. You know? So,
What is their toy store?
oh, there's a toy store on Main Street. That's great. If you have nieces or nephews or grandchildren, whatever, in the 0 to 5, 6-year-old range,
Yes.
got terrific toys.
No, you're right. They used to, if you got a $10 bill from your grandmother, you
Yeah.
could go downtown and spend it, and spend, should I get that or get that,
Yeah.
So
Get
that's,
some cheesy little girl earrings or buy a puzzle or whatever.
One thing that dominates,
Everyone, Peter had mentioned many of his concerns earlier. What are some of your other concerns about downtown?
so one of the problems in town is that the primary retail spaces are occupied by real estate brokers.
Yeah.
And they're not helping the vitality of the town.
Right.
And in fact, they're usually empty because the brokers are out showing houses or working from
Because you're
home.
referring to
It's a
right across the street.
Yeah, across
it's
the
a
street.
billboard. There are five. How many? There's 5 of them.
4 of them, in the
Yeah.
4 or 5 in the downtown, yeah. And they're all empty.
I worry about the pressure. I worry most right now about the pressure for the market for real estate. I mean, you can't buy anything in Manchester pretty much under $1 million. And with the harbor views from some of the downtown locations and our current zoning, I think we could see, the Sovereign Bank convert to housing, the Harbor Point convert to housing. That's my biggest immediate concern. I think.
Can I say something about that? Because I was in the current master plan, the average median home value in Manchester in 2017 was $900,000. This median, right. The median value now is like $932,000.
I think it's
cool.
1.1.
Well, I looked it up on
Yeah,
our
but
website.
Not that much more,
Yeah.
is what your point is.
Yeah, is that I mean, that issue existed
It-
back
it's-
then too.
And it's
So-
not unique to Manchester.
Right.
That's it, this is not I don't think the affordability problem is something that is at all unique to Manchester. But the dollars on the upper end for some of these conversions may create greater pressure for Manchester than than they do for other places.
And
That's
also,
just my
yeah,
opinion, but I'm not a real estate.
the pressure, I mean, I don't know what the rent will be for what was 7 Central. What's the rent gonna be? And the owner of that building the one that's being stripped right now, said he's gonna put commercial down there too.
Mhm.
What's the rent gonna be there? The point is, are they gonna be sustainable options for people to run a business,
Yep,
right?
that is a great
A
question.
retail, but I don't know how you overcome that.
And yet you
That's-
look at how much they're having to put into the buildings. They're
Oh,
putting, clearly putting in a lot of dollars.
It has
Huge
I
dollars.
I think the adding residential and keeping residential, for example, at School Street, as opposed to converting the whole building to commercial, is what's subsidizing and allows you to maintain the commercial space. So, as we talk about zoning, that's kind of what we need to think about is, just letting someone have to renovate a commercial space for just commercial cost is not very cost effective, and rents they'd have to charge astronomical unless it's your own building with your own business. So I think at least maintaining in some way the opportunity for residential, but not completely residential.
Mixed use is really.
Are we going to see more development proposals like the one at Cargo, where they may maintain its tiny little commercial sliver there just to keep up with the downtown idea, but the rest will be residential? It's the same with 7 Central. They're doing the same thing, right?
But they're at least putting a
Yeah,
little bit back
exactly.
where it hasn't existed in a while.
Right. And maybe that's the right size. Maybe that's
Maybe
the
that's
inventory that we
all you
need.
get
Yeah.
is small
Yeah.
storefronts, but that maintains the vitality. And even having some real estate offices doesn't, as long as it's part of a continuous stream of storefronts, isn't necessarily a bad thing. People stop, they look. It's not a break like a parking lot or a house in the streetscape of storefronts.
I think the idea is if you're coming to shop for a house, you will go to the Realtor and then you're gonna go
Have
to the
lunch.
other
Yeah.
places in town. It is a reason to come to Manchester, but, there are two ideas I've had, as I've thought about this and sort of in the short run. The library wants to expand. We've got empty downtown spaces. How do we bring how do we take some of the library functions that they want to expand to some of the space for a 5-year period? The other thing is, what are the community-based organizations who have offices? I have one in mind, but I'll talk to them first before I say it out in a public session. But what are the community organizations who have office space, small little office space, who could be incentivized to come and have an office in downtown? Now, that's offices, but if they're a public kind of organization, perhaps part of the incentive was in their office hours, they provide public bathrooms in exchange for some sort of, some sort of incentives. Who are and what's their draw? Office space isn't the same as a toy store, but certainly it's better than vacant.
Oh, for sure.
And library programs are good for they bring people into the library.
And it's all demographics too.
And it's a range of demographics. So it's just two thoughts that I was wondering about in the short run. Could we, and who else is looking to,
I wonder if it would help. I'd like to go back to Peter's point a little bit about the expense of commercial retail space. Do we have any way, as part of the work you're doing, to learn even if it's a confidential sort of way, to get a sense of what's the range of rents. So you can begin to think about, well, you might have some artist sort of stuff. You might,
I think downtown improvement.
We talked about that already, it's between $20 and $40 a square foot annual rent.
20 to 40.
That's a wide range
Yeah.
depending on
Yeah.
use and space and size, everything, but that's pretty much what we're looking.
And that's current information?
Very, very current.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Is it
also,
correct? Did the downtown improvement go to every owner in here and figure that out? No. But there's enough people on the downtown improvement committee, they're aware of what the rents are.
Okay, so there was no actual survey.
No. So what the downtown improvement is, you probably know this already, they're bringing in the owners of spaces to the downtown improvement meetings to get their opinion, rather than just decide something out and then open it up. They're actually engaging them to figure out how better to do it.
I would just say, there's two things, Sandy, in response to your question. In terms of this assignment, it's very short term and it's very low budget. So, and that's not to say that that's not a good question. It is a good question. I would say my experience with trying to get really accurate numbers on per square foot, it's always a range. And it also varies that some people still charge by the month. If it's an investor-owned building, that's relatively recent, they're doing by the square foot, but it also depends upon, is it triple net or is it just a straight, $40 triple net?
Suddenly $60.
Triple net meaning
yeah,
that you pay, the tenant pays the taxes, they pay the insurance, and they pay for all maintenance and utilities.
Yeah,
So
you're right, it's not a hard thing you can put your finger. Plus, it changes depending on the climate out there.
It's some of it's
it-
proprietary
and
negotiating.
everything's negotiable, Commercial leasing is much more difficult to put your finger on, particularly retail spaces, because it also depends upon where you are in the business district and your visibility, and does it, what's your access point? So it's, on residential, you can look at per square foot, whether it's, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, harbor views, no harbor views, first floor, second floor, third floor, walk up or elevator. Those are kind of your basic variables. Whereas in retail, who are you next to sometimes makes a big difference. So there's.
One of the things I just want to point out is that with going back to our current zoning, the thing that may slow residential conversions with our current zoning is we don't really allow mixed use, but you could convert from commercial to residential. But we do have requirements for residential parking spaces on the lot, and some of these lots don't have any way to do that, so it would need a variance for that. So in the short, that could help us, at least if we slow down. That would help us slow that down a little bit, and then we can think about whether that's the right requirement once we create perhaps a new zoning change. I do think we would be well served to address the zoning, do something around this cargo unlimited sale and future unknown, I think has got a lot of people's attention. And so it's a good time for us to, even if we have to do something in 2 steps, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. That
Yeah.
makes most sense.
so I want to go back to Sandy's destination argument. Most destination places have places where visitors could come and stay.
That's another thing.
We
I was
don't
gonna
have
mention
that.
that.
And not only that, but we have a very strict short-term rental policy in the town. And we don't even allow ADUs to be used as short-term rentals. And I wonder if one of the things we could do as part of our downtown zoning is to allow those in the downtown, not in the neighborhoods. But just so that we can encourage people to put up visitors to the town in the downtown area.
Meaning what, Chris? What were you?
So let's say you
Bed and
have
breakfast.
an apartment above a store.
So if you live in the downtown, you're able to do it.
I'm saying that those apartments should be maybe made easier to be short-term rentals.
Yeah.
To encourage visitors to
Oh,
come and
interesting.
stay.
Or we don't allow an inn.
We don't allow it in, maybe we should allow a small inn.
So speaking of, and Sandy, you mentioned this too, and I think what we want to keep in mind through this process is there is a variable that we have not experienced during this conversation in the past, and that is cell signaling. Right? I mean, there eventually, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, there are going to be a lot of people out there. And they're going to be looking for things to do at lunch and breakfast. And that's going to help revitalize downtown, I would think. And I also, I don't know what the status is of SLV, but if something ever happened there, suddenly you're going to have, I mean, the population too, looking back at what the population was in Manchester, when the first master plan was done, it was like 5,600 people. It's less than that now. So, that might have something to do with what's going on downtown as well. We're not really growing as a town. We're actually shrinking. But we do have a couple of variables that are going to, at least during the daytime, increase the size of our population and hopefully benefit downtown. And we got to be ready for that too, right? I mean, I know we put some conditions in the special permit for cell signaling around downtown, did we not? We couldn't really do that, but we talked about it, and they did say that they intended to have shuttles or whatever to get people downtown, but that, I think that's could help quite a bit.
How many people is it? I have 250 stuck in
Well,
my mind.
And roughly the first phase,
Yeah.
say, a lot of them work at home and those kinds of things.
You're right, true, there'll probably be no one in there.
But,
So I just have one thought on, the seasonality component is big too. Just that I think Peter mentioned that earlier too. Is businesses coming in, what can stick around? Have we ever thought about doing some sort of exploring like a co-op model or like some? I know there have been these kind of partnership models where you have maybe a shared kitchen with a couple food stalls, and then maybe you have like a community tie-in that has kind of an outreach program that's involved there, so that a building could share various uses throughout the year, and pop-ups and tenants could come and go with what makes sense. I don't know how that would work in somewhere like Manchester with our population. But
well, I think right now, if you look at the map, the parcel maps, each parcel and each building is separate. Some of them have common ownership, many of them have common ownership, however. So that's perhaps an opportunity, but I think everything has kind of happened, is my sense. There's not been a downtown plan. There's been downtown improvement, has done a lot of work on the sidewalks and the lights, and those were all upgraded, signage, upgraded. There was a big downtown improvement project like 20 years ago, before the high school, so 20 years ago. And I know.
Yikes.
I know. So, I think it's been organic. It's a building owner has a tenant, the tenant leaves, they get a new tenant, the tenant leaves, they get a new tenant. Do some upgrades, you think about the coffee cup changing to whatever it was, to James.
Mooring to Jamie's.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one.
Was
in
it one
there.
before the
Yeah,
Warren?
yeah,
Was it
right,
one before
so-
the Warren? Yeah.
For
was actually
whatever
pretty good.
reason, the market, it's all been market. The market hasn't said, let's bring back the coffee cup, which was kind of a diner.
Yeah.
The market hasn't said that, or there isn't a person who has said, I want that's a great place for a diner. I know it used to be a diner, even though we all can say, oh, wouldn't it be nice if that was a diner or Peggy's Sub Shop or whatever whatever Facebook says today, that whatever parcel should have why don't we bring back whatever Zach's or whatever your favorite, there hasn't been a plan or it's been organically driven by entrepreneurs and business owners who are looking for a spot and think, and I do know that to Chris's earlier point is that it's not a destination and a lot of times there have been stores who've come in thinking that it's a high-end retail market, and it's actually not. They've said over and over, it's not a high-end retail market. I'm going to actually pick up and go to Marblehead, because that's a 30,000 people versus 5. And,
Is there currently a downtown association of merchants that, I know I've been reading that the Cape Ann Chamber is very active and helps Manchester a lot, but is there a Manchester specific?
There's a
Of
Manchester
merchants?
subgroup of the Cape Ann Chamber, but they're
Okay,
not very active.
yeah.
And
I
the
know
chamber-
Jim Brown is very active with all the merchants in town.
Right.
He's also the head of the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce,
Right.
so just became the head of
Yeah.
that.
It's more just Jim Brown.
Can I be a downer for a second?
No, not you, Gordon.
Oh, go for it.
Isn't there a reality, though, that small towns, small
Yeah.
needs, basic services are key to us for maintaining, and I know we're talking about high end, I know, Chris, you've talked about artist communities, which is really attractive here. And you just mentioned something that really gets me going here, is that the downtown has grown organically. There is no organization to it. There's giant spaces between buildings, and then they're crammed together in other spaces here. So it's also in addition to the type of merchants that we may want here, it's also the physical setting down there, the infrastructure that we have is not conducive to that nice small downtown, vibrant parking everywhere. It just isn't. So I think there's a reality that we have to face. Not that we have to give into it, because I'm still very positive toward it, but it is something that it's true. Small populations, small demands. In wintertime, I'm not here in the wintertime, at least in years past, but I'm sure it's
you're
very
here
quiet.
every Monday.
I'm here every Monday. It's very quiet here in
There,
I wouldn't have said that today, but
Yeah.
on
well,
normal
there was a very interesting thing. I mean, it was a little bit of I was very interested to hear what people had to say about the feeling of community and going to the store and meeting somebody
That's
and
great.
blah, 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 all that, right? So, inadvertently, because they came to us, there was an MIT class that, yeah. And to your point about that it hasn't been directed in terms of how things have kind of just occurred. It's both entrepreneurship, but it's interacting with the existing zoning too, and the existing owners. But this MIT crew, a bunch of young people came, and they asked a question that has stuck in my mind ever since. They said, why did you pave over pretty much the area where you can sit and look at the harbor? Like the whole Harbor Point is paved, basically, right? So I think it's a good question. And they had some intriguing answers
Yeah,
to alternatives for
like
it. And
taking Crosby's and moving it across the street.
It was a good exercise, I found, to bump up against, because we all come from our own histories and what we're accustomed to and habits. And they had a couple of pretty interesting ideas, I thought. And we might want to fold it into our deliberations a little bit here.
So what was their conclusion? Did they? This is what you were talking to me about, correct?
Yeah, so their conclusion was that you want to take advantage of the harbor, you got to make it visible. And it's only visible from beyond the railroad tracks, essentially. And so their idea of taking Crosby's and moving across the street wasn't crazy from an urban planning point of view. It was to create a focal point in the town where you could sit and look at the harbor and be in the middle of the downtown.
Yeah, but there might be a way to do that without moving Crosby.
Well, there might be, and of course,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
we have the
No, it
the
was,
parking lot right out here, which is more, more paving right up against the waterfront. It's ridiculous.
yeah.
Well, they're all opportunities to think
Mhm.
about. And, we'll have to workshop to kind of think through some of that. So
I wanted to be sure you knew about that MIT
I
thing.
did, so I
Yeah.
did, so I'm trying to think what it was, which faculty member, I happen to be an MIT grad, so
Okay, great.
so I'm curious about which faculty member sponsored
I
it.
I have his email address. I can get it to you
We have the report.
and the
Yes.
report.
But I think that it actually raises the question that is, who is our downtown for? And I
Yes.
think people, one of the things that always comes up is, I had dinner with somebody and we were talking about downtown, and he said, I want it to be vibrant and I don't want any more people. I don't want it to be, I don't want to be a tourist destination. And I think we have tried to walk that line, and the tourists stay the Singing Beach side of the railroad tracks. And, so that is a real tension. And you got to stand up out of the seat first, and then and then lift the thing.
The damn thing go up. Excuse me.
But the Masconomo Park parking lot on the point is actually exactly that. Because I happened to be down there today, taking a phone call, pulled in. And there are many people, there was a council, like a nursing home van, and they had parked there and they had the people walk just a few steps to the point. And there are a lot of people who enjoy the water from their car year round because there's parking there. So I think it's a complete antithesis to good urban planning. But the way it gets used, we might want to think about whether that's, I think it's a little bit about who's it for.
Yeah.
That parking, why is it paved that way? Because it's close to the commercial fishermen. Because it's close to the harbor dock. And a lot of people actually year-round and day and night, like nighttime, sit there in their cars smoking or
Are you talking about high school
reading the
students?
paper, having a cup of coffee. Go down
That's
there in the
insane.
morning. Seriously, you have 6 or 10
Oh,
cars.
Sarah, I wasn't
Yeah.
talking about that parking. I was talking about the parking that's surrounds Harbor.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
But
that-
anyway, but there is but I think it raises the larger question about who is our downtown for. Now, Essex folks
what do
come
you
to
think?
Crosby's, I believe, for the quick thing that they need. They don't have a grocery store. And Magnolia folks.
And I think it also helps to think about what is the definition of a tourist. Because technically a tourist is someone who travels at least 50 miles
Oh.
and stays overnight.
Oh.
So
That's not.
that is what when you do tourism data analysis, that's what you're
Okay.
really looking at. Sometimes I think people are using that, and it speaks to, Chris, your reference that Manchester is not a tourist destination because we don't have overnight stays.
Mm-hmm.
But the question then is,
For
what
day
about
trippers.
visitors?
Day trippers.
And, visitors are really people who travel, less than, an hour, 2 hours, may do a day trip, may do a half-day trip, maybe, you have also friends and relatives who may stay with some people here, maybe they're, overnighting at, there is a B&B in Magnolia, or in Gloucester or in Beverly. But they're visiting family here. So, I mean, yeah, there's probably some impressions of what a tourist destination is that people don't want. And maybe let's learn about what people don't want about a tourist destination, so we don't go that direction. But the businesses may need more people than who just live within Manchester.
Yeah, I think downtowns are changing. It's not just Manchester.
Right.
People are shopping online. That's just the reality of it. Big box stores. You have a long list of stuff you're going to get. You're not going to go to the hardware store. You'll go get the hooks and the little stuff, but that you forgot. But if you're building something or doing some major project, you're going to Home Depot or some other place. Kind of what I'm hearing is what we may want to, people have to accept, that downtown can't be just for the people who live here anymore. If you want it to be vibrant and busy and have storefronts and that kind of stuff. But no matter what, I don't think Manchester is ever going to be a true tourist destination. We can change all the streetscape. I can improve and come up with plans to improve the parks and improve the parking lots and make everything cute and quaint and perfect. And you're still not going to become, even build a hotel and an inn, and you're still not going to become a true tourist destination. You're just too small. You don't have enough room, enough land, area to develop, that type of stuff. But you can attract visitors, whether those visitors are the 250 people working at CST who might go out to lunch or work late and grab dinner. They don't want to cook.
Or the boaters.
They didn't get a chance to go do their laundry and they need to buy a shirt for the next day. Whatever the issue is, they will support the businesses if you have the right mix of things. It's attractive, it's easy to get to, there's parking, which you do have. You do have parking. But it's going to be a nice place to go. And same thing, 127 you mentioned, it's a state road. How many people, thousands of people, drive through downtown Manchester on their way somewhere else and don't stop? You don't think about stopping if you're not from Manchester, so to speak, or saw the movie or something like that. So you need to create a uniqueness so that when people come around the corner and they go, oh, here's downtown, there's a spot, let's pull over. Give them reasons to linger, give them reasons to spend some money while they're here. You're not going to be competing with true tourist destinations, but you certainly can do better job through all various types of public improvements.
Expand on that, Mark. What various types?
Well,
Public
streetscape is one that's been mentioned a bunch of times. Clearly, that's one.
What is it again?
Streetscape. Making your downtown a unique place.
Yeah.
You see it in lots of places. Brick sidewalks. The formula is pretty much the same, but how you implement it locally is what's really important. The fine tuning, the parking, the bump outs, making it safe for people to cross, slowing traffic down, proper signage to where the parking is, nice lit and attractive walkways from one place to another, places to linger along the waterfront with comfortable benches and a walkway and shade trees and all those types of things. We could take a little walk around downtown and I could point out, as we move through different places, things that could be done to make it more attractive. And that's what people like when they're taking their day to go visit somewhere. They may want to go to Rockport, they drive through and they go, oh, this is cute, let's stop. Haven't seen this before. So there's that thing, and then that makes it more attractive for the local people, and it helps supports the other storefronts that you want to keep open. so that you have more choices as a resident. So those are just some of the things. The other couple things or opportunities you do have, like you mentioned, the library and town hall. They bring people, local people, to the downtown. The senior center, opening one in back here is going to be quite helpful as well. Parking and yeah, and expanding the docks in the summertime. I was talking to one of the harbor masters today. He said last year it brought in like over $400,000 in revenue to the town voters. Now just think about how much additional money they've spent in all the stores and the restaurants.
Was the 400 grand
I
just
think
from tying
that's
up?
what they
That's the estimate from the number of people who are using the
Bion.
Treon, the transient docks. I think it's a extrapolation. It's a guesstimate. I'm not sure it's a.
It's a,
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I didn't go into
Absolutely.
detail about where the number came from, but,
We can talk about that.
okay. Well,
but-
you're on the harbor management committee.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna. Again, I want to think about. I like to think about what we can do soon, and I was thinking about the kiosks at every hotel, every bed and breakfast in Gloucester. Do they have a thing that says come to Manchester because you can go to Singing Beach, it's 20, you got to pay a day fee, but and then you can go to these 3 restaurants, 4 restaurants, 5 restaurants, whatever it is. And is there something there? How did we miss the boat on those summer things to do? Short-term beautification. Like, can we engage next year one of the senior projects to put window boxes on every business. With a lot of the businesses really do a nice job already, and then have Friends of Trees water them, or like what are those short-term things that can be done, and who's going to do them, and how they're going to get paid for, and then the idea is that creates also an opportunity, because if we had a couple of anchor stores or retail establishments, the thing that people are going to come for, I can only get my widget at the widget store in Manchester. I don't know how you find that thing, but then people come for that and stay for the beer. Whatever.
So their
We
ideas,
have some anchors.
Yes, we
Your
do.
library is one of your anchors. Town hall is one of your
But I don't think anybody's coming
You don't-
from out of town to come to
Right,
town hall
but-
unless they want to get married.
Well,
there
in
is
terms
that.
of stores that draw, I mean, restaurants often draw. I think your restaurants may have more of a localized market than a draw market.
But nobody knows about them,
Well,
perhaps,
Marketing you have to do marketing these days, and I heard that several times, so
So-
I mean, maybe it's
Yeah, that's-
happening more than I know, too. I mean,
so there's things like farmers markets, pop-up events. What's interesting,
Somebody-
we have a lobster fleet here, but you can't buy a lobster in town, which is kind
Well,
of
maybe
funny.
you figure out 1 or 2 days,
That is
maybe,
funny.
maybe
It is
it
funny.
becomes the first Friday of every month and season becomes lobster night, so you can,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you gotta work with your Board of Health that way, there's things that you can think about, and also your lobster fishermen have to be willing to,
Sell.
maybe it's not a Friday night, they may want off,
Yeah.
maybe it's,
Thursday night.
but so I have an existential question here, which is, solving the downtown is a huge enterprise, and it requires a lot of things happening at once, public improvements, zoning changes, marketing, events, all these things have to happen in a coordinated way. But we don't have the power to make those things happen. We can change the zoning, I guess, and we can encourage other people to do things, but we're gonna need the cooperation of other boards, like the
So-
Downtown Improvement
Yeah.
Committee.
So,
One of the
but Chris, to your point though, I mean, why couldn't we, I'm thinking about this too after going through what you put me through for the last 3 weeks.
You
Why
poor
can't we,
thing.
why can't we champion the idea of all this?
I think we can champion it, we just can't necessarily deliver.
Yeah, well, but you can,
But
The effort.
championing makes a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree, we do have to champion it. But we can't just announce that this is what's gonna happen.
you're right.
No, you have
No,
to get.
Well, that's why we're doing some visioning and planning and
course,
trying to
you're
build
right. Yeah, and
consensus
talking,
and
right.
enlarge this,
Yeah,
circle of stakeholders, because you're
Hmm.
pivotal in terms of some actions, but you don't, every aspect of downtown is not the domain of the planning board, so it's a multifaceted, you're absolutely
Yes.
right, Chris. And, taking from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, they founded the Main Street approach, which is design, organization, promotion, and economic restructuring or economic, thriving economic district. They kind of changed the words. So those principles of design, organization, promotion, and thriving economics. Still, if you think you've got to work on all four things. So some of the things you've talked about relate to promotion, some relate to the design and character, whether that's the infrastructure, whether it's the buildings in the historic district. Some of it relates to the economics. Talked a lot about real estate this evening, whether it's square footage, whether it's the customer base for the stores. So there's aspects of that. But it also requires organization. One of the lessons we can learn from shopping centers is they have centralized retail management.
sure.
They have one entity who's working on leasing, promotion, and all these things. We're a successful downtown with many, many owners, property owners, many, many different business owners. And some may sing the same tune, but there's probably many harmonies and many tunes and some that may not sound too good together. So we got to figure out how do we make that chorus more appealing to the ear and more voices.
Yeah, can I just say, so when Mark first brought this idea of working with you on this, one of the questions that came up was, we should be aware of what the master plan includes about this topic. And if you go to the master plan, there are 2 pages that are dedicated specifically to everything we just talked about. And that was 8 years ago. So all I'm saying is I just want to caution us that we don't try and reinvent the wheel here, because it's all right here.
Right,
I've read it. And
Yeah,
I'm aware of it,
but the organization piece is missing.
but it's referenced in here,
Right,
the
but
importance
it's-
of it.
But I think that the Downtown Improvement Committee has been really working hard on this, and so I don't want to just, but they've been kind of alone. And so I think
Yeah.
it needs more,
Oh,
and.
I totally agree with you,
so
but
I
that's
think that
exactly
maybe-
what this said, and we
Yeah,
just
you need-
haven't done it.
Yeah, so, and we had COVID in the middle of that too, don't we?
Yes,
So,
that's important.
the 4 pillars were design, organization, economics, and
promotion.
promotion.
Which
And you can
happens first,
define
by the
each
way?
of those very
They
broadly.
don't have to be together, they can't be one.
It's not, we're gonna swirl those 4 together. Is it led by design? What does design mean, by the way?
Well, design often refers to your building design. Sometimes it's your window display is an aspect of design. Building improvements, renovation, maintaining your facade, maintaining your building. Is it accessible? Can fall under design. Signage can fall under design. Wayfinding can fall under design. Some people go towards placemaking and how to connect better with transit. Zoning is a design statement to be in many ways. So it can be very broad. You may prioritize and focus on certain things, but it can be very broad. Promotion and marketing can, there's all different layers, whether it's social media, whether it's, traditional advertising and marketing, whether it's special events, and, there's retail events and special events, there's image development events, there's a lot of different aspects of promotion. In terms of looking at organization, some of it's how do you build those partnerships, whether it's with the chamber and regional entities in terms of all the local committees? How do you bring people together, doing some planning and building, some consensus? It may be a management entity. Some downtowns not only have a local downtown improvement committee, some have what's called a business improvement district. That may not be where you want to go. Business improvement districts can do a voluntary or mandatory fee amongst all the property owners, collect that to advance a plan that's supplemental to municipal services. Some people do parking benefit districts so that they charge for parking and then use that money for downtown improvements, because you need to figure out how do you finance things. Some towns put it out of their, take it out of their general fund,
Yeah.
we can get into a lot of nitty gritty details. We're probably not going to get to that level, but organization is like, how do you get things done? How do you, who all do you have to invite to make sure
A lot of
all of
pieces
us
to that.
get together?
Like by seven.
And, just like the planning board is very important, but you also have a staff director of planning. So, managing volunteers and having staff support for, volunteer efforts.
I wanted to raise, Kathy, I see your hand up. I'll get to you in a minute, okay? One of our select board members has her hand up. But I wanted to raise two things that are, one is the planning board. We could see it as an opportunity, but it also could be a curse. And that is site plan review or special permits in the downtown. So they give us the opportunity to guide the design and that kind of thing. At the same time, we are historically have been slow and bureaucratic sometimes on site plan and special permits. That some people would argue that. I know Windover at one point finally said they weren't going to do any more built projects in town because managers were too difficult. Permitting-wise. So there's something to think about, and part of it we control, and we will certainly be inclined to say special permit for some uses, perhaps, and rightly so, probably. But it's something to be mindful of in terms of being expeditious, thorough, but respectful of the time is money for applicants. So that's just something that we should be aware of. And the other thing, I'm looking around at the pictures on the wall, which all have to be schools, but this town seems to have vocal opposition to any change. That doesn't mean, I think we've learned in the last year with our zoning efforts that vocal and votes aren't always the same thing. So we have to have courage. The wall in front of Crosby's was literally going to cause kids, remember this, to smoke pot, sit around and smoke pot. And, the tennis courts, we could talk about that for a long time. But, the change of that it has that then is like kind of becomes part of the fabric of the town, is we have to, I don't know, it seems to be particularly challenging in Manchester.
Can I say something? I am surprised to hear that from you.
Why?
You, the leader of the biggest change this town has ever seen with that whole middle school, high school in the middle of it.
Yeah, but it took, what did it take?
It was a massive effort,
Gray hair.
but it happened though.
Yeah, I know, but I think we have to have courage to recognize that, I mean, it's just like the MBTA zoning, right? If you listened to the
Right, look at
voice,
it. That was an
it
amazing
was,
effort.
turns out it was 23% of the vote. And same with accessory dwelling units, for 10 years, we've tried to get that passed, and it was
Well,
23% of the vote, you know, like,
I
So-
think informing people is so important.
It is, but-
Getting to people, it's hard to do because.
and I think social media has made it even more
Made it
challenging,
worse.
so.
But I think the other thing is that change is happening, and if we
Yeah.
don't
Anyway.
manage it, it's things like cargo.
Exactly.
So
Well,
we-
that's exactly
I
right.
think that's what
Right,
people
I
are
think that
learning.
people need to understand that the status quo is not gonna keep the status quo.
That's right,
Right.
exactly.
Right, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And I think that's becoming obvious to a lot of people with the changes that have happened in the D1 and D2 districts.
We don't have many people online, but I'd like to just hear from Kathy Bellata, who's a select board member and has had her hand raised for a while. Kathy, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of things because you guys raised some really good questions. Number one, I just got my quarterly notice about the upcoming Chamber of Commerce meeting. It's being scheduled, so I wasn't sure if you guys were aware. We, Select Board, Town Administrator, Chiefs of Fire and Police, and the Chair of the Downtown Improvement Committee all meet with members of the Chamber of Commerce every quarter. And I just noticed that I don't see representation from the planning board or Mark specifically on that invitation. So I think that's one way for the planning board and or Mark to engage in conversations about some of the short-term things you were talking about. So I'll connect you and make sure that that happens. But it's a really great forum. We meet with business owners and representatives from the chamber and talk about events and marketing and what do the business owners need. So
Can I just
wanted to-
ask would it make sense to have Kathy come and do an interview there, or before or after? We can maybe think about that. You
Yeah,
probably have
I mean,
other agenda items.
Yeah, so it's run by the chamber. And not all businesses are there, but it's a great connection point for the town officials and town staff to meet with business owners, but it's not everybody. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it.
Okay, great.
Because I do think that's a gap if no one representing the planning board or town planner is attending. Secondly, we talked about here, I heard you talk about a lot of what I'll call governance issues. Who's doing what? And it was something I was actually going to bring up at Monday's select board meeting, our next meeting. I think it's worthwhile for the planning board and select board to kind of figure out that who's taking the lead on what, because you're right, downtown improvement has been doing a lot, but it's a little bit different than perhaps what their original charter was. So we need to kind of just take a peek at that and make sure collectively we want to keep it the same or maybe not. So I do think it's a governance issue worth discussing. And then lastly, a big fan of taking a look at the master plan. As you said, some of these items are already covered in there, and also there's also a subsequent downtown improvement 2.0 presentation that was given to both the select board and planning board at least a year or two ago, and that also has some nuggets about the the beautification of the downtown. And some of those items were put on hold because of the culvert project. We didn't want to spend money on things that potentially could get ripped up. So I do think there's some other artifacts that we want to take a peek at so we don't reinvent the wheel. Just those three things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, can I speak about that streetscape, the 2.0 part? So I was intimately involved with that whole thing, and
Yeah.
yes, indeed, the culvert project kind of stifled everything in dollars and money and where its financing comes from and all the practical stuff in here. But, and I do agree that the whole mission of the downtown improvement has evolved into a different direction from what it was 3 years ago when I first joined it. It was all about beautification and curb line and streetlights and stuff. Now, that's not even brought up. Now it's all about revitalizing the downtown. What is the way to do it? Fits in hand in glove to what we're talking about here. Perfect.
Right, and I think they, because the beautification was kind of slowed down a bit because of the culvert project, they had brought in members of the business community to just say, how else can we be helpful? So I think they have redirected themselves a little bit, with good intentions and done a lot of great work, especially in the past couple of months. But I do think it's appropriate for the select board and the planning board to kind of just take a look at what's going on and make sure we're clear on who's taking the lead on what. Otherwise, there's duplication of effort, and that usually doesn't wind up leading to good things.
I think that we're not quite sure what we're doing yet, so. But that's a couple really good points, thank you. Let me see about a couple other people, or anybody else, Adam or Jane want to say anything? Okay. So.
Can we talk
yes,
a little bit about June 9th and switch gears?
Sure.
So, I believe Sarah and Mark shared with you my draft working agenda for the June 9th community workshop.
I saw that.
And one of the things I wanted, I did bring some extra copies if you need it.
That would be helpful.
Is that your proposal?
No, I was supposed to put it in the packet.
There are two.
Brian, sorry.
I'll take that. No, I don't. Thank you. Do you need one, Gordon?
So I think that without getting in, walking through everything, or maybe we can.
Can we actually start with does June 9th feel too soon? And I'll put it up on the screen. And so that's one question. Maybe
Can I answer it?
yeah.
In my experience, it is a bit too soon. If we don't have something that if we're just out there throwing it out and casting a net and hoping to reap in something, that's one thing. But if you're expecting to have a real solid conversation, I think this might be chancy to do it this way. It's one man's opinion.
We can't allow perfection to slow it. Perfection is the enemy of completion and moving forward often. And I tend to have those perfectionist tendencies anyway, so I certainly like to get more done than we sometimes do. But I think bringing people together to have a conversation, we're having smaller conversations like we did just now. We did that with the Downtown Improvement Committee in the Historic District, and we're hoping to do it with a couple others before the 9th. And those conversations can continue. But trying to get a kind of vision statement in a rough draft, we can always fine tune it in the future, but let's kind of get that first cut at those early action items. I think we can do it because every group I've talked to so far has already started on those early action items. And you've got many of the ingredients. And I think Peter's right and Kathy's right. A lot of that is in the master plan, so we can revisit it. And I think so really having the workshop I see as having a mix of some small group discussions, because sometimes it's a group this size where it's easier to have a discussion than having a discussion with 50 people at one time. So I tend to use a mix of small groups and as well as some at-large discussion. So one of the things on the agenda you'll notice is that we divide up into small groups a couple different times. And that's, so I wanted to get, and when I talked to Mark and Sarah about it, we thought each of you could sit at a different table. So we're gonna let people self-select, encourage people to sit in a place where maybe they don't know someone, so they meet their neighbors, and we welcome people. But if we can have each member of the planning board sit at a different table, because what I like to do is, and I tend to have handouts for every table on every person, so that someone can be what I call the recorder, and take the big ideas and consensus ideas and put it on flip chart paper. And that could be, and someone also be the reporter, so talking out. So it doesn't have to be the same person, but having a resource person like a planning board member, you don't have to be the recorder and you don't have to be the reporter, but you need to make sure there's someone at your table who does each of those functions. And it may be you, but you figure it out amongst yourselves. And I think that helps move things along. The goal is not necessarily to report that there's 6 or 7 different ideas at your table. It's what, as a group, where your consensus points are. So, people might say, oh, that's a really intriguing idea, and only maybe one person mentioned it. But if people are comfortable as a group saying we should talk more about that, bring it up as a group. But we don't need the recitation of the 7 different ideas. We need the summary, the common threads. And that would be your role as kind of the resource person for each table. So you're taking a leadership role and convening role for each table.
So I have some logistical questions. Actually, I think it's really good to do it right up front, start off with this, because it is going to shape the rest of the discussion going forward. But I think we have to be careful not to assume that the people who attend this first thing are going to have the right answer. It's going to evolve over time.
There's no wrong answers. They're all, and some answers may be embraced by more people than others.
Sure.
But,
But so where is this going to happen?
I was just gonna ask Mark if he had checked with them. Did you check with the high school cafeteria?
I haven't booked anything because I wanted to
check
make
with them?
sure, no.
Okay.
And does this rule out Zoom participation? Because that's,
we're going to do all face-to-face. It is really difficult to do effective hybrid because we're wanting conversation to get to that consensus. There's times and places where later on in our planning process, I'm certainly very comfortable and have done hybrid workshops before. But I think for this, we were talking about the school, and we are on a very short timeline, so it is much more preparation to do a hybrid meeting than
So I was gonna say why we're on a short time frame, just to give you, everybody, so this is this fiscal year's money.
Yeah.
And so we want to try to use Kathy's time. And the other thing is, graduation is that Friday, so then people do start to disappear for the summer. And so as we want to try to do some work over the summer, having this input, I think makes sense. And we certainly can repeat these forums, several times and get other opportunities.
I also think we have the energy coming from people's reaction to what happens.
Right. And the other thing is that you haven't yet seen our timeline, but to get a zoning change to town meeting, if we have a town meeting in November, means it needs to be done October 1st, and even before that, which means a draft, September 15th. So that we start socializing it and have just the hearings you need to have and all of the postings and all of that.
So one of the things from experience with MBTA zoning, we get 30 people to this, we'll be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that means there'll be like 3 or 4 people per group, which
Yeah,
seems
fine.
kind of small.
Great
to me.
discussion.
And maybe
I don't know.
Well, I think we're going to encourage the downtown improvement and the historic, other committees to come
Well, we're
to.
encouraging people in
In
lovely
general.
June night to come to.
Yeah.
So can I, so if we do this June 9th, when does the first post or communication go out about the
Well, that's
event?
where we gotta,
Is that what we're doing right now?
Mark
Okay.
has gotta
All right.
get the nail down the
June 1st
room.
is next
Yeah.
week.
Sarah said, you guys are gonna take care of the logistics and outreach,
Yes,
so.
yeah, Tiffany will, you know,
Yeah,
as soon
we've
as we,
got the
as soon as we have the
template,
room,
right?
Tiffany
Yeah.
will basically handle it will go into Greg's, thing next week, and, you know, people plan a week and a half.
Cricket, yeah.
And is
Cricket
every,
and-
is every group going to have the same topics to discuss?
But it looks like,
That's
yeah.
how you get a consensus,
I just
right?
wonder if it makes sense to have different groups talk about different things.
I like to have the mix of opinions because the planning board talks to the planning board a lot. The downtown improvement committee always talks to themselves, the historic district, and we need to kind of do a little cross fertilization. Because I'm not worried, you'll all go back to your corners and regular meeting schedules afterwards. So you'll chat, but we need to get that cross fertilization.
So this meeting is hosted by the planning board?
Mm-hmm,
Okay, so
It's being
will the
hosted by the
downtown
planning
improvement
board.
committee have,
yeah.
will they
they'll come.
attend?
We'll
They'll come?
invite them.
Okay,
Well,
Well, I would
I
think-
hope they do.
Yeah, because for
They're very
us-
vocal.
yeah.
Have you met them? Have you met all of them yet, Kathy?
No, I did
Yes, you
mention it at both committee meetings that it was going to be likely and it's hosted by the planning board, but I was going to their meetings before the planning board,
Right.
so there's a little sequencing challenge
You
here.
want to talk to, I can talk to the head of the.
Well, let's get, we have to
Downtown
just get the
tomorrow.
room tomorrow morning. So if we have to push it a week,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
check
he-
with your
he is
schedules
the
then.
guy who's
Well,
the
I-
engineer.
okay, so I think logistics, I'm not worried about the logistics. I think the cafeteria at the high school works well, except for the, I warned her that the chairs are hard to sit in for a long time, so make people get up and do a stretch or something, so.
So I'm a little confused about the mix of the audience. So are the participants, is the way you're thinking about it, to be kind of getting the relevant actors in government together? Or is it getting a lot of
I am
folks?
open to both. It's really,
Okay.
the
'Cause I
planning
think
board's
it's a little bit
hosting
different.
it, so, and you all, I'd like to know what your participation goal is so that I know how many handouts to have and you know, how many tables I might likely need to be prepared for. But I can do as many as you want.
I think the thought was that it would be, there's a lot of overlap among the committees and the people who come to all of these forums. So that's one thing, and I think we would want to encourage interested citizens
Yeah.
to come
Recruit a little.
talk about you. You're
And
yeah,
business owners
and
and
business owners.
property
Yeah,
owners. I
so we
mean,
may need another week or
Well,
so.
when we did the MBTA forums and
Yeah, we
there
got to
was
reach.
the harbor management one, we got about all the same number, 40, 50
40,
people,
yeah.
somewhere right
This-
in that,
Good
not
attendance.
more.
But it wasn't designed so much for other government entities as it was for the public,
No.
if I'm remembering right about the forum.
I think it's an opportunity to say, we're thinking about this issue, we want your
Wanna get you
input early
involved.
on.
Yeah,
And, you know, we'll probably hear all of these same thing we've talked about, but hopefully we'll also hear some interesting solutions and find the couple of people who want to help, you know, make window boxes, whatever the action
Well, as
item is.
Chris said earlier, downtown's very complex and there's a lot of different pieces. And the planning board deals with the land use and zoning, but you need, you know, marketing and you need, you know, business and you need real estate. So, you know, the bigger mix you have, think of this as a way of setting the table to begin the discussion. And this is really kind of your first discussion event. Because, and that's what we're kind of doing in this fiscal year. You may want to then continue doing some more planning and getting in, going more in depth. But we're starting on, you know, kind of the broad
understanding of
bring
the
everyone
program.
together, and we're still in the broad brush
Mm-hmm.
stage. But it's a beginning.
One thing that we haven't talked about tonight, I don't know if we want to spend any time on it tonight, but we haven't really talked about where is downtown. And I think somebody said, should we focus whatever this effort is more tightly on a, where would we start, where would we end? I know that was always a downtown improvement. When I was on downtown improvement like 25 years ago, that was an issue too, just because that was the beautification phase of downtown improvement. So, how do we, where is the action? And we may not need to.
Well, I think I want to kind of yield to Mark for a little bit
Yeah.
because he put together some maps on different perspectives of downtown.
So in your packet, I put map of the entire downtown general district so that you could look at that. But that's okay.
Andy's got one.
But the other thing I did is I put together a map that included the entire general district. And I'm going to pass this around, but it has no lines drawn on it. And so what I thought would be a good exercise was for everyone to draw on the map the area that they perceive as the downtown part of Manchester. Not what the zoning shows, but what you perceive the downtown. And if we were going to work on
Not that I ever brought it up.
rezoning the distinct area, or including maybe a streetscape project, or other unique changes, how would you draw that?
And then I actually do have up on the general district, which I think is interesting because it includes a lot of land behind.
Right, but
Yeah.
first, look there,
Yeah.
look at your map and draw
Okay.
the area.
The area.
So you're collecting
You
data
just want me
from
to
us,
circle
Mark.
around the outside of it?
Draw around the property lines where if you were all of a sudden zoning czar for the
How
downtown,
zonings are.
how would you draw like the downtown zone?
So I have to be particular here. Are we talking about the mercantile downtown? Or are we talking about,
Whatever you perceive.
I would include residential in that too.
Well, I mean, that's however you want to perceive it. I would, because, well, I mean more of your downtown business area.
Downtown.
Like if you were going to create a specific, like I don't want you to include residential if you don't want to somehow in the future have it be part of a commercial downtown district. I mean, because that's what we're really leading towards is how do we define the downtown area? Because you do have such a large and vast general district. So some of those are, quote, downtown residential style areas, but I don't think you want them, I mean, a large portion of your residential areas around the downtown are like that, no matter how they're zoned. So,
And if people are comfortable, it would be great if you put your name in the corner, and then, Mark, maybe we can collect them and then scan them so all of you can see the different definitions.
Always revealing. Let's see here. Oh, my goodness. I need a. Okay.
And
By all
again,
rights,
there
we
is
should
no
all-
wrong,
We should all come up
Alright,
with the same
Andrew, it's
plan,
just-
by the way.
it's your perception.
I mean, if
No,
everyone
no,
comes
no,
up with
no.
the same general thing, aside from maybe a few properties here or there, that's a good
That's
thing.
helpful.
That's really showing that there's kind of a
Concepts.
general understanding of what you perceive as the downtown. And, that's, and if you guys are all over the place, then
You've got work to
you've
do.
got a lot of work to do, because that probably is an indication of the general community is also as many diverse opinions on what downtown is, as this six of.
The microcosm beta.
That's right, yes.
Interesting. I mean, you almost have to go parcel by parcel, because
Are you literally going parcel
well,
by
no,
parcel?
I'm looking up one parcel that I was
Drawing
curious
big bubbles
about.
around everything.
What are you doing?
Oh, I was just looking up a particular parcel.
There's the treats and there's the business areas.
I have extras if someone wants to redo theirs.
We gotta put our initials on these things?
Yeah, I think you wanted our names
It's a whole
on these, right?
little.
Yeah, just so we can want to discuss.
All right.
Ah, boy.
Ready?
Ay.
Yeah, that would have been a good.
Did everybody put their names on it? I want to make sure
Yes,
nothing.
I put my name on it.
Peter.
Peter.
If you wouldn't mind, thanks.
Oh, boy. Ay.
Well, either Mark or I will scan them and we'll share it with all of you, so
Great.
you can.
Okay.
Are you doing one too, Mark?
Good question.
You need to draw one too.
I need to draw one?
Yes, you do.
Okay, all right, I'll draw one pretty quickly, I think.
You know what's interesting?
Actually, I already.
People who've lived
well,
in the town for a very long time remember there being little commercial enterprises scattered throughout the residential. Little tiny
Well,
shops.
there, I mean, and then that's kind of like, there were nodes before there, with a little commercial, a corner store or something.
Yes,
Because people didn't have cars, or there
Right.
was only one car per household.
yep,
So if if you ran out of milk, someone had to be able to walk
Go
to the
get it.
corner store because the person with the car was at work and wouldn't be home for another 6 or 7 hours.
mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you very much for, I think, enlightening discussion. It's been nice to have a discussion, so.
I do have one more question. Is what you did with us today is similar what we'll do on June 9th? With the
We'll be
larger
much more structured on June 9th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same question though, thoughtful responses,
Right, I mean,
engaging.
the idea, and you've got a hint of where I'm going with
Yeah, I'm gonna
this agenda. This is what I would call an internal working agenda. We will have a handout agenda as
wanna see
well. But the idea is to have Gordon, is to have a thoughtful discussion.
Yeah.
Because I really think how you reach understanding is through conversation and listening and, finding where you may disagree or have differences, but also finding out where there's common bonds and common threads.
Yeah.
Yep. And quite frankly, we need more of that in our civic life.
Yeah.
brother.
For sure.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for
Yes, thank
coming
you.
Well,
tonight.
thank you for all of your time as well. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
this is great.
And for your
Yeah.
colleagues in the public as well.
Yeah, great. We do have some other business, so you're welcome to stay, but
I may leave because I have a bit of a drive.
I'm kidding.
I thought about taking the train, which would have been much more comfortable, but I didn't know how late we were gonna
well,
go.
and also the train unfortunately does not run only once an hour or so.
Where's
You've
home?
got a 9 o'clock
Oh,
train.
9 o'clock.
Yeah,
But
it's a decent.
Again, I didn't know how
Yeah.
late we were going.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you so much
We
for
actually
coming.
didn't talk about the train as the focal point of the downtown.
Yeah.
I included it in my downtown.
Mark, you go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
So, thank you, and we
Hold
will
on, Mark.
be in touch about confirming the 9th.
You want a new one?
I don't want to see yours.
Oh, mine? There you go.
No cheating.
That's what's good.
What do you do? I can't even see this squishy mess.
I just haven't heard what it is. Okay,
He just traced yours.
You copy mine?
You traced mine.
Okay,
all right, great, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right, great, good discussion, everybody, thank you very much. We don't always have quite so much fun, but we will.
I never thought of you, so this is easy for me.
We didn't talk about the One Stop grant. Did we want
Did
to,
we decide, I'm unclear on whether we decided June 9th, we're gonna go for June.
we have to check the space. Yeah, okay. To be determined. Mark, you want to talk about the One Stop grant? And,
So the one-stop grant we're putting together. I have a draft of it. I was gonna send it out, but I didn't quite get a chance to finish doing an edit to it. I wanted to do a first edit, so I will probably send it out tomorrow afternoon that people can read and send back any comments. But basically, it is a more detailed look at what we've been talking about. How do we implement, with this, the end of this project will give us kind of a big outline of tasks, right? Things that we can do once we figure out what everybody's vision is, not just 6 of you, but the other boards, committees. Kathy compiles a report and puts together kind of the list of what she's heard that people would like, how to implement some of these things. But this takes it to the next level where we bring in consultants to really look at if it's the way I think it's going to head toward where we want a more attractive downtown. We want to incorporate more visitors to extend our business community and the seasons and other things and support multiple businesses. We need to change the zoning to allow that, not just, so that's a little bit more of a project to do so. And so it would be to bring in a consultant to do that, also to put together kind of a updated streetscape plan for the downtown, which incorporates some of what's in part phase 1 that was built almost 20 years ago, and some elements are really quite good. And how do we carry some of those elements through into phase 2? And what would we change in both areas? So we would hire an engineering firm and landscape.
Literally, VHB was the engineering firm that did everything you just said. Streetscape, roadway, curb line, things, bump outs, blah, blah, blah.
That's a 20-year-old plan.
No,
no.
it's a year or two old.
What?
Year or two old. That's why I joined the downtown improvement, is to manage that process.
So,
Do I think it needs to be relooked at? I do, but understand that a lot of energy has already gone into it.
yeah, no, I understand. But I think, because I did look at that little phase 2 set of drawings.
They were sketches. They were
Yeah, Yeah,
They're
that's,
unsatisfactory. to me.
exactly. Exactly, that's what I've,
Yeah,
that's the
demographic
only,
images,
that's what I've seen.
Yeah,
So,
it
so
needs to be
but my point is that that needs to be done in a much more involved in, manner, to bring it to 25% design drawing. Once you get it to 25% design drawings, then you can apply for MassWorks funding to help pay for this. You don't bring it to that level, you're not gonna get, it'll be less likely that you're gonna get that funding. Also, that helps bring the details of the plan, everything from where there might be curb changes, parking changes, the picking lights and lamps and all those types of things get looked at in that high level of detail that you really want them to be looked at. And I did not see that in that.
It wasn't, it was very,
Right.
that's the world I lived in for 40 years.
Yes.
And so when I saw the drawings that were being prepared, it was a little scarce. And
Yes.
they were led by the Public Works Department, by the way. We didn't manage it. It was all Public
So,
Works.
so this would be, a much more involved project. And so it would be done in coordination kind of with the zoning and the whole look at the downtown. So,
Okay, Sandy?
Yes, I have a newbie question here. So there's the downtown, there's the master plan, which is about 10 years old. I'm trying to understand what the documents are people are referring to. So there's the master plan, which is about 10 years old, which Susan Beckman did with. And then there is a DIP 2.0.
The
Is that
downtown
what?
improvement project is the one that was done downtown. You saw it. It's got the granite curbs and granite walkways on a portion of the downtown area. 2.0 is extending it all the way through everything that showed up in Mark's drawing.
Oh, okay, wait a minute. So there is a plan that existed a couple of years ago that you were involved in managing, and then that has been updated subsequently
No,
to make.
nothing's
It has-
happened to it.
Oh, okay, so there's two things. The
Phase
Phase
master
one was
plan.
done, phase one was done, it's built.
This one was done a long time ago.
I
But I
see.
think Mark's thinking that phase one needs to be
refreshed.
refreshed.
Oh, I agree.
So,
So
Okay,
phase one needs some
And that's exactly this-
refreshment.
That's
And-
exactly the thought process we had when we did phase two.
is,
Some things worked, some things didn't.
is it, the master plan I have, the downtown improvement, I do not. Is that available online?
Which is-
downtown improvement plan.
Downtown
I
improvement meeting
believe,
minutes are
I
available.
believe I might have the phase
We should get that
two
we should get it.
drawings.
Yeah,
I'll send
yeah.
that
I can
out.
show it to you. I can bring it
Can you
in.
share?
You
Yeah.
can see it.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, it would be great to have a copy.
It was
So it's
done
sort
by
of to-
VHB, the engineers, and they were good, but they were led by Public Works Department, so it had a very definitely an engineering
Slant.
bent to it. As much as I kept saying, this is not enough, this is a straight line, where in fact, straight lines don't work. I mean, we need to think about design, how this.
So it's designed on a desktop rather than,
Hmm?
was it a desktop design kind of?
It was loose. They put the standard sections of roadways and curb and sections and bump outs and stuff, but it wasn't
Okay,
a level of detail. We were nowhere near going out to anybody for any price or approvals, because it just wasn't there. It
Right.
so,
was a good picture, is what it was.
where does it exist?
I'm looking right now. I might have a PDF.
I can get it from downtown improvement if you want me to.
That would
So we
be
should
great.
need to get that. So I think
Thank
that
you.
one of this is sort of the longer term vision for the part of the planning piece. Mark, I am gonna push a little bit on it being the precursor to the zoning,
Yes.
because I feel we can talk about whether others agree, but I feel like we could do some, I'm really interested to see what Kathy recommends for some of the nearer term kinds of things. And I'm pretty open to doing our zoning stuff in 2 phases or 3 phases if we have to, as we understand the issues. But nonetheless, I think the idea is that the state would fund this
is it 100% funding or is it a match?
Well, they would like probably to see about a 10% contribution.
So how much is
So it would probably be about $150,000.
so we would need to spend, so our planning board budget is 25,000 a year.
Yes.
So that would take up 15,000 of our planning board budget to get 150,000 of planning work done. So,
Can I ask you a question, Mark? 150,000 buys you what?
With the work of planning of the team.
A consultant team.
Of the consultant team, which would probably include the engineer and the landscape architect and the planner, we would produce those drawings for streetscape, produce the zoning changes, actually produce documents that we can then take the next step, whether it's the town meeting or for additional grant applications.
These aren't building, they're not really buildable documents, are they?
Yeah, no, they're 25% drawing.
25%. That's barely.
No, 25% is a pretty substantial
Wow. You lived in a different world than I did.
for
25% is a schematic design.
So Mark, sorry,
well,
the 15,000 of planning board money gets us to a point where we can apply for the rest of the grant.
yes.
And I mean, everything I'm reading is that these grants are becoming harder and harder to get based on, you know, what's going on in the world and what happened with Tux Point for the rotunda too. I just want to be careful that that doesn't happen again, right?
So, I mean, if we don't receive the grants
Then we,
in
yeah,
the fall,
we
we
make a
will
decision.
still have our full 25,000, so that if we want to pursue, bring in just planning consultants like we had today to refine some additional zoning proposals, bring in landscape architect to work on, I don't know, some improvements to something, or we can discuss what that would be. Again, we would kind of have more of a list of things to look at and prioritize at the end of these sessions with Kathy. So,
Thank you.
So Mark, is there any economic development portion of this that can tell us that these kinds of storefronts are feasible and these high-end restaurants aren't, or whatever?
well, this isn't necessarily like a business development type
No, I
program.
know, but if we don't have a
So
business
that's
development,
different.
well, our public improvements aren't gonna do squat for us if we don't have a viable economic development plan.
I'm looking at the website, it's the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative, Technical Assistance Program, is the single application portal and collective review process of community and economic development grant programs. Make targeted investments based on development continuum. So it says it's about downtown development. So. What is the deadline?
June 4th. Yes.
Of this year.
apply?
Yes.
And that's all stuff that you will,
Yes.
Take
I'm
care.
working with Sue Croft, our grants coordinator.
And when will you know if the funds will be granted?
Generally, it's October. It's end of October is when they do the grant announcements. So, and then you,
Send on hyperspeed.
well, they have a lot of applications
Yep,
for
yep,
a
that's
lot more money than they actually have. The town does not have any other applications being submitted at this time, so it's a good year to submit something on behalf of Manchester. And,
Are there deliverable requirements, or, do we have to pledge to do any particular, besides a match of funds?
No. I mean, we're representing that we're gonna get product at the end of this project, which is the drawings that we can then move forward with, and zoning that we can bring to town meeting.
Does it help that we were an MBTA zoning community?
Well, it means that we're still eligible to apply. If we hadn't,
Basics.
Yeah.
if we hadn't done that, we couldn't do that.
Okay, I was hoping for a gold star.
So we haven't seen your draft yet, and it's your recommendation that we apply for this and that we use our budget for the match. And have you been in touch with Downtown Improvement I just don't want
Yes.
them to feel that this is,
So
Yeah,
I regularly go to their
Yeah.
meetings. We've
And they're
talked
on.
about it at the meetings as well. So, yes.
okay. So I guess what I'll say is, our budget is $25,000 a year. We have generally not used it. One of my items for this year is to be sure to use our money. And this would actually be FY26 money, right?
Yes.
FY27.
So we're using up almost all of the funds that we had left over. We did use some of the funds for one of the MBTA studies. And so we most of the balance will be used for
Kathy's.
Kathy. So,
But the one-stop grant starts in when? January?
yes, so we would probably have contracts signed in December. And so generally you start in January. So,
I'm just trying to figure out if it would be out of our 25,000, would leave us only 10 to do any other things that we needed to do this year.
Like
So-
what? Like that are gonna cost money?
Like more Kathy's time, or
Yeah.
potentially there's so we don't meet before June 4th, so maybe we have a motion to support the submission of the one-stop grant for the downtown improvement, but ask that maybe Gordon is a member of the downtown improvement committee, and I review the grant before bless it.
Sure.
And that the understanding is that we would spend up to $15,000 as a match as a 10% of the application. Does that make sense?
Sure, I'll make
folks?
that, I'll
Okay.
actually make that motion.
Okay, second?
And I'll second it.
Okay.
So the question is then, the only way that money would be spent is if we get the grant.
Right,
Okay.
Yes.
right, so we would know.
Clarifying that.
Yeah.
if we didn't get the grant, then we could discuss
Or if we
how do we
came up with some other
accomplish.
priorities, we could always
Yeah,
Right,
pull
so,
it, yeah.
yeah, no, that's an option. That's nice to know. So we have some flexibility with that. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No, opposed? Great, thank you. Great, so you'll get that to us and we'll,
Yep.
three of us will sit down and just go over it. Great. Okay.
So in your, so you guys are gonna get, town emails, we're gonna do like between now and June, we'll do kind of a primer. Anybody else wants to come to talk about the, how we use the, Outlook
SharePoint.
and SharePoint. So, couple of things to remind everybody, everything we do is public. And we have to be careful about group editing of documents because that's deliberation. So while it's tempting to do comments on documents, we have to be careful about that.
So if I send out a document to
Right.
everybody, you
Right.
can reply back to me, but you
Right.
can't
Can't
go reply
Reply
all.
to reply all or show comments
Oh,
that, if I comment on your comment, then that's
Mm.
deliberation,
Right.
which is really
So you
unfortunate.
reply back to me, and what
Yeah.
I generally do is I will, go through like a document and the comments that make sense
Yeah.
to include. Sometimes people make several different points, but if I write some new section or paragraph that addresses several points or adjust the language, like we did with you were on the MBTA task force, like I did with that. So not every single comment will be in there, and of course then we'll be discussing it. So you can bring up why wasn't this was my comment at the meeting, or you'll see that it was addressed in a different way.
Okay. Yeah, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. All right, I am trying in my single screen here to share something. So the next item, which is so in your packet, you got it by email, but you may not have gotten it in time.
I
Was
actually,
a list of, here we go.
Sarah, I have one quick procedural question
Yeah,
before you move on.
sure.
And that is there a packet that we should come?
It's on one, it's all, you'll see it, it's
It'll
on
be on
it's on a SharePoint drive. And so we tend to do most everything in electronic versions with the exception of plans. It's nice when we have division reviewing plans to have a physical copy.
Yep.
And those get put downstairs across from the town clerk's space. There's some,
In the mailbox.
Yeah, the
So
mailbox.
this area,
yeah, so
That
we
would
get
be
the
down
whole
there,
plan
yeah.
comes down.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Great, thank you.
Ask any questions like that anytime. Procedural questions, you can always, text. Or call. So in the packet, Chris had started the ball rolling on the list of things that we might do this year. And we don't need to go over this right now. What I might do is just give us a one sentence on each of these. I think we've talked a lot about the downtown visioning tonight. Housing production plan is a requirement of the state. And that's going to require expenditures of funds, right?
A requirement for
For the housing production plan, don't we have
It's paid for out of the
have to pay?
CPC.
Oh, CPC's paying for
Yeah,
it? Oh, good.
paid for by CPC funds.
Okay, so that is,
So I have one quote I need to get because of the cost. I need to get 2 more quotes, so
okay,
before someone is selected, but that's a process that goes through the planning board. It needs to be adopted. The plan needs to be updated with 2020 census, which is why it's a little more extensive update than the previous update. And then it needs to get reviewed and adopted by the planning board, then by the select board before it gets submitted to the state for review and comment.
but in terms of our timing, it doesn't take huge amounts of our
Doesn't
time.
take huge amounts, but when we get to the point of actually
Reviewing it, right.
reviewing it, it will take some
Yeah.
time. And the consultant will probably want to come in and
Yeah.
take an hour of a meeting here or there as they work through it, so.
So other projects that we've talked about over the last couple of years and have done some work on is a demolition delay, which really sits with Historic Commission, but we can work with them on that. Senior housing, we actually have drafted several senior housing bylaws that we could dust off and move forward. We've talked about downtown rezoning. If you look up on the screen, if you don't have it in front of you. The revision of forms and fees and revision of rules and regulations. I think a lot of that can be done by Mark. We had an interim planner who started that, but it still needs to be done. Driveway regulations have a long history and remain problematic. We need to tidy those up. Drainage review for lots, how we deal with stormwater coming off of lots, and then ongoing zoning bylaw edits in general, which are typos or small things that we can probably advance some of those. Cluster zoning we actually have a bylaw written that we could take another look at if we wanted to. We have a cluster bylaw. Cluster bylaw is group housing together and keep open space. In Manchester, that requires 5 acres.
5 acres, and there aren't any 5-acre parcels to do it on, so.
Right, so it's sort of a moot point. So we actually had revised that and for a bunch of reasons, get it over the finish line. There are two districts around the heater, Pine Street, Pleasant Street, School Street. D1 and D2, they have different requirements. There's the MBTA zoning process identified some flaws in the way they were written and described and got translated from an old version of the zoning into the new zoning. So probably a pretty simple fix. And then I added a few other things that have come up, clear cutting of lots. I know Peter has talked about, I think, commercial conversions to residential and site plan review for that. We need to appoint associate members, and I'd like to have.
Yeah, sorry, can I ask something about the associate members? I know you talked
Yeah.
about that at the last meeting. So you had asked us to think about
Yeah.
candidates.
Yeah.
Is there like a list of criteria, or is it the same as the planning
Same as
board
the
pretty
planning
much?
board,
Okay,
yeah.
so we're just looking for someone that's,
Yeah. And we have actually 3 people who have expressed interest. We need 2, so
Yeah.
it's not. We
okay.
have to just do that.
There'll be a formal request for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I see.
And then remind me, they will come to every meeting,
I don't
or
think they need to come
at
to
their
every meeting.
choice? Or-
We can sort of pick and choose which ones.
Okay, so
make
they got to be
sense.
on
Yeah.
standby, on call,
Yeah.
pretty
Well, I
much.
think
A site plan review.
when we have applications, they
Right.
need to be consistently at the
Right.
meetings, because that's
That's
the
the
whole
point.
purpose.
So we have
Yeah.
like absences.
Okay,
Yeah, but that's, special permits is the
Yeah.
key thing.
okay.
I want to talk about communications policy and practice. And I would like to suggest that we do some training and budget and consultant use. So those are among the things that we, and then the things that we already completed, lots of zoning changes.
Sorry, Sarah, one other
Yeah.
question, and this isn't big flippant, but do we have a communication process?
We don't.
Okay, that's, okay. No, I just wanted to, yeah, thanks.
For a bunch of reasons, but I think,
I wasn't being, no.
I think the time is coming. I think it's not that
Jesse
hard.
just volunteered.
No, I think, so, and then it's really important to say, in the last year, we did MBTA zone, last 2 years, 3 years, we did a whole slew of zoning updates, MBTA zoning, accessory dwelling units, floodplain, site plan review, associate members. So we've made a lot of progress. But got a lot still to do.
Halfway through.
So I learned a fun fact in
Oh,
looking
yeah?
at the master plan, yes, that, do you know when the zoning bylaws were originally drafted?
1948.
And do you know when they were first updated?
like 1980.
1970.
78.
Yeah.
78. And according to the master plan, which is 2017, between 1978 and 2017, there have been approximately 80 changes.
Yeah, I think we've done 80
Right, I was
since
gonna
then.
say, it all seems to be, yeah.
tried.
Fairly
Exactly.
And they're all needed too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like a wildebeest. 'Cause
Yeah.
so many of our zoning bylaws were entered into the zoning by citizens petitions, which is partly why sometimes they have illegal stuff, and there are a lot of citizens petition things, so. But,
Sarah, can I add one more
yeah,
thing?
of course,
This is what I was thinking about. I know we've talked about it a lot. Who actually enforces decisions we make?
yes, enforcement.
Yes,
Enforcement.
please.
Yes,
That becomes, and I thought about two examples. 208 Summer Street here, that rock pile, how's that ever going to turn into what he expects it to turn? And also self-signaling, actually maybe arranging a site visit with them, just to go see
Yeah,
what
I'd love
it
to do
looks
that.
like.
I
It'd
drove
be-
by
it'd be a wealth of
Cell Signaling
knowledge.
today, as wondering that, and,
You drove up into the
no,
construction
I
site?
I drove as far as I could without requesting permission. But, so one of the things for you is, have you been up there?
Not recently.
Have you checked to see if they have their website up and with a contact person that's required by the special permit? And then I'm wanting to make sure we have the money. $1.3 million. That's,
they're
on
I
my-
really-
believe that's on schedule.
That's on schedule.
So
Yeah.
part of the communication
So-
process should be exactly this, right? Is how you follow up on these decisions.
That's a different communication.
Right,
I think
it's
that's a
communication,
follow-up
right,
is
yeah,
enforcement and follow-up
Right.
are
Yeah.
two things. So another follow-up item is at the compost site, the site plan conditions that we imposed have not been done. We asked for some vegetative order along the edge. I think it may be unreasonable, given the compaction there and other things, but that can't be just ignored, even by the town. So those kinds of things, we should, on communication, I'm thinking of how do we respond to the public's interest in particular projects, like Cargo or the Pine Street, and I have some ideas about that. So there was a discussion about, we can parse, I think you had asked, and we've talked at length before about trying to set priorities. There's no way we're gonna get all this done this year. And who's gonna do, how they're gonna get done. We're gonna have Mark do some of them, we're gonna collectively do some of it, and some of it doesn't need a lot of deliberation. It's kind of common sense, I think.
So can
So,
I name
do
one
we
other
want to
thing?
have a retreat?
Sorry.
I'll add my list and the things we just talked about to the project list. And we had talked about having a retreat. Sue and I are both opposed to a Saturday or Sunday, but what I thought I would do is set out like a doodle poll to say when is good for a weeknight, where we really kind of talk through not the details of these things, but which of these things we think are most important, how we're going to get them done, and kind of lay them out on a calendar. I do a meeting calendar. Mark and I talk about it, and it's like what we're going to do at each meeting, so we can kind of try to accomplish things. And the deadlines that come up, we can anticipate that you and your comrades are going to have a site plan review up there on Pine Street in our first multifamily housing.
Me and my comrades?
Yes,
The
your
design
team,
review
the design
committee.
review team.
The,
So we have to think a little bit about how
Gary-
we're going to do
have
that.
to deal with
you know.
Gary, huh?
Yeah.
Is Gary on that committee?
Yeah,
Yes.
Gary and Chuck Wise.
that's good.
Yeah,
I
be good.
like talking
Yeah,
with
we'll be
him.
good. So, things like that. So we kind of need to lay those things out and,
Yeah.
So does the retreat, does that have to be in public too? Okay.
but I think we would
So
not take
everybody
them.
can come on the retreat,
Yes,
anybody that wants?
I think we would do it, it would be posted, we would do it in a different place, and we would not have Zoom.
Yeah.
It's the way we've done it in the past. And yes, if somebody wants to come and sit at Tuck's Point or someplace, then.
When would this happen? Sooner the better.
Yeah, sooner the better. I think rather than trying to look at calendars right now, I'll do a doodle poll to find out when people are available, if that makes sense.
We'd also like to invite the new town administrator to come meet with us.
Yeah, we'll certainly meet with us, whether we invite him to the retreat or not, I don't know. Doesn't need to worry too much about D1, D2 right off the bat. So,
We will.
so maybe, I don't expect you to know what all those things mean. Don't worry. It's okay. And,
Right.
yeah.
It is okay. Yes, I will agree with that. Don't
Yeah.
worry part, I'm not sure I.
Yeah.
Hey, I have the meeting packets.
But, yeah. So I think we'll, pause on that, if that's okay. So that will be the next step on that. There was a little bit of correspondence, some public hearings, but, but now what I need is a motion to enter executive session pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, regarding an open meeting law complaint from Shannon Slaughter Esquire on behalf of Timothy McDonald and Elizabeth Kinder, dated May 5th, 2025, to acknowledge the receipt, review the complaint, and consider the response. And executive session pursuant to the same general law to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation, because the chair has declared that an open meeting may be detrimental to the litigation portion of the planning board. McDonald and Kinder versus Planning Board, Land Court Docket number 25, miscellaneous 000270, and we will return to open session. So I'll take a motion to that effect, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
I need to take a roll call vote, I believe, for executive session. So Sandy Botter Turner, yes.
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 Wharton,
Yes.
Gordon, Sarah votes yes. Chris
Yes.
Olney,
Yes.
Brian Fry. Okay, and I need to share this.
In the Zoom.
Do we in the Zoom?